This is a special edition of the WPRO Morning News with Tara Granahan and Andrew Gobeil. A conversation with Rhode Island Governor Lincoln Chafee, exclusively on News Talk 630 WPRO and 99.7 FM. Now, a conversation with Governor Chafee.
Welcome back. It is 8:09 for you morning commuters. You want to stay in your cars because we do have Governor Lincoln Chafee in studio this morning, and we've been working on trying to get him in a very, very busy schedule. But we thank you for coming in and giving us the time. And good morning.
Good morning, Tara. Andrew, good to join you on WPRO.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. We wanted you to get right to it. Everyone has a minimal time. People are getting their kids off to school and they're getting ready to go to work, and they want to hear from you. And I think a lot of folks are saying, where did his budget proposal come from? And you wanted to be able to take a few minutes without interrupted, cutting of a soundbite and editing. We want to give you a couple of minutes to set it up, how you came up with the broadening of the tax base, the 1% and 6%. That did get a little confused and muddled, I think.
Well, first of all, everybody knew that this year was going to be the bad year for a budget. The federal stimulus money was going away, so fiscal year 2012, which is this budget year, is the bad year. This is one of the worst in Rhode Island history, and that's no surprise. We all knew this one was coming. And during the campaign, I talked about the revenue side for a whole year. I campaigned saying we're going to have some revenue because the cuts have already been done. So many of the cuts have already been implemented over the last 3 years. $195 million cut to the cities and towns over the last 3 years. So that has ramifications to Providence and to Central Falls, Pawtucket, Woonsocket, West Warwick, deep ramifications for those distressed communities. Also, deep cuts to higher education. $38 million over the last 3 years. That's not smart. We want our state institutions to be affordable, to be able to go to CCR, be able to afford to go to RIC, be able to afford to go to URI. And so these deep cuts have raised the tuitions. So my budget, I came in with these tough economic times and the cuts already having been implemented and knowing we had to address the revenue side. So my budget's about half on cuts and half on new revenue. And I did also want to look to the future and look to fiscal year 2013 and what we're coming into. I think it's smart. I did that as mayor, always think ahead, and also invest in education and invest in roads and bridges. So I'm very proud of this budget. We do those three things. We invest in the future, we invest in education, and we invest in our infrastructure, roads and bridges.
There has been some criticism, perhaps, that you're out of touch, and I think the perfect manifestation of that is in your call for increase in revenue. Taxing home heating oil, Governor. I mean, that is the one that everybody is up in arms over. How can you justify that?
Because electric heat is taxed, and so is natural gas heat. So it's a hot button, and I've been a mayor for 7 years. I've done 7 budgets. I'm definitely not out of touch. There's nothing closer to the people than being a councilman and a mayor, and I did that successfully for 4 years as a councilman and 7 years as mayor. So I've been right down with the picking up the trash, plowing the streets, providing wastewater treatment and all the basic services for a big part of my public service career.
But you can understand the justification and the frustration of many when we're dealing with, $400, $450 heating bills for a winter.
I didn't create the mess. I just came into it, and no tax is a good tax.
I thought you were going to back up on that, though. Are you rethinking the home heating oil tax?
That's a hot button issue. There's no doubt about it.
What does that mean?
The people are up in arms. It's easy to point to it. I think it's about $4 million in revenue totally. We've got Paul Dion here from the Revenue Office helping with some of the details. But just let me ask you, when you say it's a hot button issue, Governor, will you change your mind, or are you set on that? Because sometimes we think you're going to say, I might pull back on that, because it is. I know in my household it's the second biggest bill. You've got your mortgage or your rent, you've got your home heating oil, and then your gas if you add it all up. Yes, it's 1%. So 1% is. No tax is good, don't get me wrong, but it's 1%. And no, I am not rigid on these proposals. The process is you have hearings, and the word hearing means you're supposed to listen. I do listen.
It's funny that you say that.
This is a big one.
One of the comments that came in on a Facebook saying we're having you in here today was, will you ask him why he's not listening to the people of Rhode Island? Can you hear us? We can't afford more taxes. Why can't you do it a different way? Why can't you do the cuts, the slashes, work on the pensions, et cetera, without raising one tax? Is that at all possible?
I'll try and make it simple. There are 3 big areas of the state spending. The first is human services, the second is state aid to cities and towns, and the third is everything else. And state aid to cities and towns for the last 3 years, state aid has gone down 18%. We've cut $195 million. That has had ramifications to Pawtucket, to Cranston, to Providence, to Central Falls, and to property taxes. There are ramifications, those deep cuts to aid to cities and towns. The second is everything else over the last 3 years. That has basically stayed steady. There's been no increase in everything else. So with inflation, there have been cuts there. And the third is human service. That's gone up 10%. That's the tough area. And when I say in my budget, I am addressing the cut side. That's where we're trying to go, the growth area, human services. And where is that growth? It's in 3 areas. Nursing homes, our elderly in the nursing homes. The second is adults with disabilities. And the third is children with severe disabilities. These are very, very emotional, hard issues to make the cuts in.
Of course, no one's going to ask you to start cutting, the older folks, the disabled folks.
These are very tough. That's where the money is, though, Tara.
Yeah. How about cities and towns? They're all complaining as well. You mentioned cities and towns. How are you working with the cities and towns? And we only have a couple of seconds in this segment, but how are you working with them to say you have to get control? There's no more money over here.
We're going to continue to help them on the mandate side, what we can do on the mandate side, but I don't want to budget those savings until I realize them. I'm a very conservative budgeter. I like to be very cautious and conservative about budgeting savings that I might not realize. That just gets you in a deeper hole down the road.